My hammer burns with holy fire.
Holla ballers and welcome, champions of the light. Did I sound like him? Probably not. Welcome to the Holy Paladin guide, a very unique way of looking at healing. And if you like being in that melee range, good. Let's go. So let us kick it off and raise our big 2Hs. I've got to say, I'm in love with the idea that the Paladin gets the two-hander. I have been ever since it was revealed. It's so cool. It really fits the theme so well. I know many people would like to have the tome in their hands, but I think the two-handed mace does its job very, very well. As we get into this, the purpose of this guide is to set you on the right path. That's all. Get you into the habits that will get you to be a good Holy Paladin. As always with Legion, once you start getting different Legos, that's legendaries, and all kinds of tier sets, things can mix up. So that's when you're going to have to do some further reading, unfortunately, because the top end of Legion is a whole cluster of things. But it's quite nice for the Holy Paladin, honestly. It's not the end of the world. What are we looking at then? Let's look at our stats first of all and make you aware of some of the passive things that happen with your Paladin that you might not know about. So we have Righteousness with maximum health. We have our Mastery, Lightbringer. This is the Mastery stat. Proximity to your target causes your spells to heal for up to 34% more. That is interesting, isn't it? Yes, position. Very much like the monk, in fact. Position is everything with the Holy Paladin. Your range to people matters a lot. Typically, it's about 10 yards, right? The closer you are, the more healing you will do and the more effects you can have on your party. Something you really want to bear in mind. We also gain Infusion of Light. Your Holy Shock criticals reduce the cast time of your next Holy Light by 1.5 seconds, or increase the healing of your next Flash of Light by 50%. Good God, do we want some Critical Strike? Yes, we do. So if we talk about stats, our main stat with the Holy Paladin is Critical Strike because of this passive. It also makes Haste our worst stat. And that should be obvious why. Because if we're critting a lot, not only are we doing more healing because we're critting our heals, all good, but we're also gaining all these bonuses to our spells, right? And Flash of Light is naturally extremely fast, or we're going to reduce our Holy Light, which is kind of like our go-to, it's not going to cost as much, general healing spell, by 1.5 seconds. So Haste becomes the worst stat, which is kind of annoying because you can't really have the same sort of gear setup that you would have, say, Prot, and then just swap over to Holy. So my gear is just a mess for Holy. An absolute mess. Not that it's going to stop me doing some healing and doing some videos on healing with the Holy Paladin. But that's by the by. You guys will be able to do other things. But this also means that you might think, oh, Mastery's got to be really good then. Well, maybe not. So Crit is obviously our best stat. It also dwarfs Haste. But we have to think about what our Mastery does. Proximity to your target. Now, this works with your beacon as well. Your beaconed target. So you get this double effect that goes along with it. It's like closeness to your beacon target and close enough to you. What's beacon we're going to talk about in a second. Now, if the raid's all spread out, right, in a big group, typically not a big problem in 5-mans. There's only 5 of you, so you can generally be in the mix. But for whatever reason, if you're not going to be in proximity with a lot of people, the value of Mastery drops significantly, in which case we then look to versatility. So you're going to have to base this on what kind of encounters and content you're doing. Are you in the mix a lot? Mastery is going to be really good for you. Are you not? Maybe versatility is going to be better for you. But understand that those two are kind of dependent on the situation. As always with the healers, we have to decide what's going to be best for us. So I'll allow you guys to make that decision all on your own, right? We have Heart of the Crusader, increase your mount speed by 20%. We've looked at that before. And we also have our artifact ability, Tears Deliverance. Release the light within Silver Hand for 10 seconds. And it heals an injured ally within 23 yards for 91,204. Every 0.8 seconds. All allies healed also receive 40% increased healing. So you get this big healing buff that you can put on people. Not only does it carry a heal, it's a 1.5 minute cooldown, so it's not particularly long, and then you get this big buff that you can put on people. Very, very cool spell. Not only that, it just looks awesome. It just looks fantastic. Boosh! And you get this buff. Healing an injured ally for 91,204 every 8 seconds. So you can throw that out and just put out some big dick healing. You see, it's like it's trying to heal the training dummy. Look at it. It's trying to heal the training dummy. Oh, those poor training dummies are getting hammered, man. They're getting hammered, but it's trying its best. You can see Tears Deliverance there. It's trying to heal the bros. It's doing its job. Let's look at some of our other spells before we get into the talents then. So I talked earlier about Flash of Light. 40,000 mana, not the cheapest thing in the world, but Holy Paladins are okay with mana, actually. It's a very quick spell, heals for 278,000 at its base, but as you now know, that's modified by a number of things. Yeah, so if we Holy Shot crit, which is... Oh, it did. We gain that Infusion of Light, so our Flash of Light is going to heal for much more. You can see it's already up to 418,000, right? Also, you can think about our artifact abilities. Holy Light and Flash of Light have a chance to unlock the power of the Silver Hand, increasing the healing of your next Holy Shot by 10% of all damage and effective healing you do within the next 10 seconds. Amazing. When your health of your Beacon of Virtue, which is the talent I have right now, but it's your beacon target, falls below 50%, your next Holy Light or Flash of Light, again, modifying it, on your Beacon of Virtue target will heal for an additional 100%. Can only occur once every 30 seconds. So what you can see is Flash of Light and other spells get heavily modified, and it's important you understand how they work. Similarly with our AoE spell, Light of Dawn. So it looks a little bit like this. Whee! Light of Dawn is a very interesting spell. Unleashes a wave of holy energy, right? Healing up to 5 injured allies within 15 yards frontal cone. So similar to how we looked at the Monk, which is with the Chi Wave, you had to be aiming in the right direction. So you do with the Light of Dawn as well. So it's a 15-yard frontal cone. Again, position is everything. You can't stand like over here and try and Light of Dawn. So where's our injured training dummies? There we go. You can't stand over here and like hope for the best. It'll hit somebody close to you, but it's not going to hit someone else. So you have to be aware of what that does. Now, not only that, we have modifiers yet again. Sacred Dawn, all allies inside your Light of Dawn receive 10% increased healing from your spells by 6 seconds. So you can use this in a number of ways. Yes, obviously the AoE component of it, very, very nice. But you could also throw it on a tank who's taking heavy damage and give him a Light of Dawn to get that 10% increased healing for 6 seconds if that's something that's an emergency clutch situation for you. So just think about that you can use your spells in not what might seem the obvious way, like this is AoE. You know, like a Holy Priest, it's like, this is my AoE spell, this is my single target spell. I don't mean to mock the Holy Priest, but you get the idea is that you can mix and match these spells in a number of different ways, which makes them super interesting in my opinion. We do have another healing spell though, the Light of the Martyr. Something of, with new Paladins especially in easier content, Light of the Martyr seems extremely tempting because it's very cheap. Yeah, 16,500 mana. You sacrifice some of your own HP to instantly heal an ally for 323,000, right? It's not bad. You take damage equal to 42% of the healing done. Does not cause your Beacon of Light, though, to be healed. So I think before we go too far into that, we should explain Beacon of Light. Let me spec out of it real quickly. You're in combat. Oh, you silly dummies. You silly dum-dums. Get me out of combat. Where's my feign death button? It's got to be around here somewhere. You're not going to pull me out of combat? Really? Are we going to do this game? Me and you? Fine. Fine. So, Beacon of Light is an ability that you can pick up that you will put on a target. Typically, it's going to be the tank. And you should have this keybound because you want to be able to swap it. I'm going to keep... Thank you. Hail, High Lord. You want to be able to swap it to different targets, because obviously one tank's not always tanking, right? So if your main strength as a Holy Paladin is, of course, tank healing, with these big, solid heals that you can just tunnel into... How far do I have to go for this to work? Oh my god, I'm going to be in the Plague Lands in a minute. You have to be able to swap your beacon around. Now, what the beacon does is duplicate your healing. So when you heal somebody else, the person with beacon will get that heal. Very important. So what you don't do is I'm back in combat again. I almost made it, man. I almost made it out of combat. It dropped and then it just brought me straight back again. What a swine. What an absolute swine. So what you can do, let's see how far we can go during the video, because it doesn't matter for a healing video where I am particularly. So what you'll do is put the beacon on somebody, and then when you heal somebody else, that person will get healed again. So you're passively healing another target all the time, right? Super important. However, Light of the Martyr does not allow you to do that. It does not transfer the healing over. So that's what you want to be aware of at all times, okay? So very important. We do have some DPS spells. We have Consecration, very, very important, because you might have heard Holy Paladin DPS is actually pretty good, right? A lot of people like having Holy Paladins in there, especially in Mythic Plus, to add a lot of damage. But most of it is melee damage, in fact, besides Holy Shock. So you're going to be able to consecrate targets. You also have Crusader Strike. You want to have this bound, and you want to be able to use it, right? Doing 300,000 damage. It has 2 charges. We have Judgment, which we can cast at distance, that does 330,000 damage. And we also have Holy Shock. Now, Holy Shock is a healing spell, but it's simultaneously a DPS spell. So it triggers a burst of light on the target, dealing 245,000 holy damage to an enemy, or 225,000 healing to an ally. Holy Shock has double the normal critical strike chance, so that's very important to know as well. So you have all these benefits that come with... In fact, I can't even Hearthstone. Oh, we did it. We did it. Aren't we good? We're good players. Instantly back in combat when I come back in here. I guarantee it. It's so funny. So those are your main healing spells. Not only that, though, we have buffs that we can give to the raid. So our big one is Sacrifice, the Blessing of Sacrifice. On a 2-minute cooldown, it places a blessing on a party or raid member, transferring 30% of the damage taken to you for 18 seconds, or until the transferred damage would... Ooh, I want to make sure I get it word for word. Would cause you to fall below 20% health. So it won't kill you, but this is a very, very powerful tank cooldown. Not only that, but we can reduce that damage there. Reduce the damage you take from Blessing of Sacrifice by 40% in our artifact weapon. So what we could do is give tanks a 30% damage reduction cooldown. That is massive. Believe me, that is massive. Sac is amazing, and you should get used to using it instead of trying to spam heal a tank up. Think about throwing in a sack in there, right? If you're new to a Holy Paladin, be ready and raring to go with throwing Sacrifice onto your tank and using it regular. At 2-minute cooldown, you can use it quite a lot. Blessing of Freedom, the same again. Blessing of Freedom is absolutely awesome. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And it gets you out of a number of situations. Sometimes when you're rooted, it's not just a case of you can't move, but you're actually taking damage from those roots. Lots of scenarios like that in Legion where you can break out and run free. Think about spiders pinning you down. Freedom will break those. So what I would do if you're new to Holy Paladin is try and science some of the ways that you can use Freedom and try and get used to using it. It's one of the most undervalued spells that I see from other people playing Holy Paladins, not using Freedom and certainly not being able to use it quickly, right? Often it's something that gets left behind in the keybinds when they're new players. So they might keybind things like Flash of Light, Holy Light, and Holy Shock. But the blessings, they tend to get left behind. I would recommend you absolutely do not do that. You have it nice and convenient. You can see I put mine in like an order, which is just Alt-1, Alt-2. And then make sure I've got them in order. Same with Hand of Protection. Place a blessing on a party or raid member, protecting them from all physical attacks for 15 seconds. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Your tank's lost aggro on a mob or something along those lines. You can bop these people. You can prevent so many things happening to various people if you're good and fast with your Blessing of Protection. Also means that you've got to make sure you're looking at the battleground, yeah? You're making sure you can see what people are doing. Is this guy rooted over here? Maybe I want to throw Freedom on him or something like that. Maybe I want to bop somebody. It's entirely down to you how you use them, but just be ready to use them. These are big, powerful spells that you have access to, so I recommend you get used to using them. On top of that, we have Divine Protection. Our personal cooldown reduce all damage you take by 20%. Wonderful, especially when you get into higher damage scenarios. And of course, the good old faithful Bubble. One thing you'll notice, though, is I've created a little macro here for my Bubble, which is cast Bubble and then instantly cancel Bubble. Very, very useful in a lot of scenarios. You just have to be aware not to spam the button. So if you're very like, oh, I need to bubble, you're going to run into trouble with that. If you need to bubble, you should be able to press it once. I've bubbled, and then be able to cancel the effect whenever you need to so you can get on with other things. So I'd recommend you do that as well. Other cooldowns we have, though. Lots and lots of cooldowns with the Holy Paladin, which is why they are so useful in so many scenarios. Aura Mastery empowers your chosen aura. We're going to get to that in the talent section. Increases its radius to 40 yards. So we talked earlier about this 10-yard range with the mastery and stuff. This extends to the auras we're going to choose later, which means that when you use Aura Mastery, it gives it to pretty much everybody in the raid group, right? And increases them. Not only that, but it tends to buff it and make it do more. So in my case, Devotion Aura will no longer split over the number of allies in the aura, okay? So it affects everybody who's within my aura. On top of that, we also have, of course, Avenging Wrath. Oh, yes, we do. The power to pop the wings. It imbues you with Wrathful Light, increasing healing done by 35%. All good. And your critical strike chance by 20. So you're seeing all this crit stuff coming in and making itself known. They were very clear this time round on making sure you knew about crit. So those are the spells we're going to be using. So you can probably get a general idea of how you play. But first, let's go through our talents and see how you might choose some different ones. Bestow Faith. This is generally the go-to along with Crusader's Might. Infuse a friendly target with Faith for 5 seconds, healing them for 340k at the end. At the end. It doesn't do anything for 5 seconds. But it is extraordinarily cheap, and you can guarantee that your tank is probably going to take damage in 5 seconds, right? Or somebody's going to take damage in 5 seconds. In fact, if you're really good, you can see some enemies casting at certain targets. You might wonder, why are my bars hidden? Right? Why are they hidden? That's because, and why do I use all these macros which are mouse overs? You'll notice that when I heal people, I do it with mouse overs. I simply mouse over my target and I press whatever I want to press. What I don't do is select people, right? I don't select people to do it. What I do is mouse over them. The reason we do this is because I keep my target on the enemy. What this allows me to do is free up a focus target should I need it, and also constantly see in a nice, easy way whether they are casting something and who at. Right? So when that boss starts casting arcing bolt at somebody, I can see who that's going to very, very easily. And my raid frames also show if people have aggro and such. So I can see what's going on and react to it. So I can put things like Bestow Faith in them and be ready to drop a big flash heal on them or a Holy Shock or whatever it might be before they've even taken the damage. Right? It's super cheap, heals for a hell of a lot, well worth picking up. Light's Hammer, 60,000 mana. It's criminally expensive. They've actually made this cheaper, and it's still expensive at a 1-minute cooldown. Hurls a light-infused hammer at the ground, where it blasts 10-yard radius every 2 seconds for 14 seconds. Each blast deals 90,000 holy damage to enemies, and heals 6 allies for 30,000. It's just not worth, unfortunately, which is a shame, because it looks awesome. It's a real shame, because it looks fucking awesome. It looks so good. And I used to use it all the time, certainly like Mists of Pandaria days. Well, right now, there are just better ways, which you probably can already assess from what I've told you, of doing some AoE healing. So it's unfortunately just not going to make up for it, particularly with the talents we can choose later on. Crusader's Might, though, you might want to pick up, because it's actually really good. It has a damaging and defensive capability to it. So Crusader Strike reduces the cooldown of Holy Shock and Light of Dawn by 1.5 seconds. This means you can time everything perfectly, which is very important to healing. It's no good just being like, I hope I have Light of Dawn and Holy Shock when the big AoE comes out. Who knows? What you could do is take Crusader's Might. That's going to push you to do more damage anyway, if you want to distribute some extra damage, certainly in different Mythic Pluses. And not only that, you can prepare yourself in raids for really important moments, and you can be key. You're already going to be in melee sometimes, because, of course, our auras. That means we're doing extra healing on the tanks and the melee and all that kind of stuff. And therefore, Crusader's Might comes in very handy. Take your pick. Pick your poison. Entirely up to you on the scenario you want. Level 30. Now, you might say, why have you got Unbreakable Spirit? Because I've talked to a lot of Holy Paladins, and they were like, you can use this sometimes, use that sometimes. Now, in raid scenarios, you're pretty much taking Rule of Law, right? It increases the range of your heals. It's a 30-second recharge. It has 2 charges. It increases the range of your heals and the reach of Mastery by 50% for 10 seconds, which means you're going to be able to heal people who are slightly outside of that Mastery more before it starts diminishing in its power, right? That's a really useful thing when your raid is all over the fucking place, right? Rule of Law is fantastic for that, and you want to get used to mixing it in to when you're going to do your AoE healing, or when you're going to reach people, or perhaps you're just out of range of healing people. Simple as that. Maybe you had to run away for whatever reason, so you can pop a Rule of Law and continue to heal even though you're miles and miles away. Very useful. Cavalier, Divine Steed has 2 charges. Fine. Mobility's not the best with the Holy Paladin. You are pretty much reliant on Divine Steed. So in some scenarios where you've got to go really, really fast, let's say even like something simple like a 5-man heroic, right, where the content doesn't matter, you don't have to heal shit, having 2 charges of this is really useful. Unbreakable Spirit, though, I've taken this just for this week because it's Necrotic week, and I wanted to do some healing before, obviously, practice and play around with the Holy Paladin before I made the video. And Unbreakable Spirit, having extra lay on hands, so useful for some terrible tanks that I've healed today. Absolutely terrible. And I don't really need the range of Rule of Law. Some scenarios you will do. For me, for what I was doing with my Paladin, and this is what it always comes down to when I do video guides, what am I doing with this character? There is no, you always take this in Mythic Plus. A lot of people still have this mindset, right? And you'll see them everywhere. It's not the case. What's best for me right now? So Unbreakable Spirit reduces the cooldown of your Divine Shield. Didn't really need that. Divine Protection. Didn't really need that. Bad tanks who don't know how Necrotic works, having that extra lay on hands cooldown was really nice. Let me tell you, it was really, really nice. Level 45, some CC, pick whatever suits your poison. Level 60, then we get to choose our auras. So we've been talking about this quite a bit. Now we get to pick our aura, and all of them are viable. It all depends on what are you doing. So Devotion Aura. Allies within 10 yards take 20% reduced damage split over the number of allies in the aura. While Aura Master is active, all effective allies gain the full damage reduction. So I've taken this for the obvious reason that most will pick up now, is it was Necrotic week. And I'm going to have reduced healing on the tank specifically. So a good counter to that is him to take way less damage. Right? So me being near the tank, he's going to get this damage reduction all the way through the dungeon, and that's going to help me out big time with him just not getting hurt anywhere near as much while under the healing debuff of Necrotic. Aura of Sacrifice, and remember when we use Aura Mastery, we gain all this secondary bonus. So Aura of Sacrifice, though, while you're above 75% health, 10% of all damage taken by allies within 10 yards is redirected to you. While Aura Mastery is active, 15% of all effective healing you deal is replicated to everyone in the area. It's like the Mega Beacon. You could put out ludicrous healing while this is up. Ludicrous healing. So maybe you're thinking about something like Embrace of the Eclipse on the Sisters in Tomb. You have a 10 or 11 second window, whatever it is, to massively heal the raid. Or of Sacrifice, right? Use an Aura Mastery and just boom, everybody's getting massive healing. Aura of Mercy restores 8,000 health to 5 injured allies within 10 yards. While Aura Mastery is active, though, it heals all allies in the aura instead of 3, and healing is increased by 100%. Another mega heal that you could throw out on everybody, right? Very, very useful. So figure out, do you want passive damage reduction? Or do you want constant ticking healing? Right? Which one's better for you? Which one's better in the scenario you're in? And that's how you're going to decide it. I can't sit here and tell you these are the best for this situation, this situation. You're going to have to think about, what do I actually want here? Okay, this one works. I want some passive healing, and I want to be able to do big healing, or I want some damage reduction, and then I want to put out massive, massive healing on demand on burst. You can think about it that way. Moving down then, level 75, Divine Purpose. Light of Dawn and Holy Shock have a 50% chance to not go on cooldown and make their next cast free. So if you're struggling with your mana management, really good. Struggling with your mana management, it's just going to help you out. Now, it is kind of random. That's the unfortunate part of this. And healing doesn't like random. Healers don't like random. When people don't take damage randomly, right? I mean, sometimes they do, obviously. But when it gets into better and better content, you know when there's going to be big damage coming out, which is why predictability is important. That's why we take things like Crusader's Might. So Divine Purpose is random, but it will give you overall more mana, obviously, with more free spell casts. Holy Prism is another spell, kind of like Light's Hammer. It's kind of gone by the wayside now. It's a 20-second cooldown. It costs 40,000 mana. Again, it's not super cheap. An enemy target takes holy damage and radiates healing. So if you want to use this as a healing spell, you have to target an enemy with Holy Prism to make it work. If you target a friendly person with it, it radiates damage out. It's kind of this mishmash spell. Not that useful, honestly. You can use it in shittier content if you want to. Some people will find some great use for it, I'm sure, but generally speaking, in most scenarios, you're going to take Holy Avenger. This is predictable, which is what we like as a healer. It's a 1.5 minute cooldown. Increase your haste by 30%. Yeah, sure. And your Holy Shock healing by 30% for 20 seconds. Now, what this means is that you have another cooldown alongside Avenging Wrath, which allows you to make up for massive burst damage on a regular basis. Because again, very short cooldowns. The great thing about the Holy Paladin is the shortness of the cooldowns. Very, very effective. Holy Avenger, get used to it. And being able to cycle through your cooldowns to be a constant healing machine. That's what it's all about. And that's how you're going to make up for a lot of big problems. And you're not going to struggle with them at all. Fervent Martyr. Holy Light and Flash of Light reduces the mana cost and damage taken from your next Light of the Martyr by 25% stacking. It's just, Light of the Martyr is just not that good. And I know people are going to be angry about me saying that, but it's just not. There are better ways of handling things. And you can get some legendaries and stuff that make it more useful. And if you do that, then you're probably going to find some better use out of it. But the fact of the matter is, the other two are just better. Just better than revolving one talent around one spell, which is what this is. It's revolving one talent around one spell, trying to make this work. It's a cool idea, Light of the Martyr. I actually quite like it. But... oh, you can't heal yourself with it. There we go. It's a cool idea, and certainly you could say something like, well, I've got Pride as, so I don't even take damage from Light of the Martyr. That's true. That is true, but as a Holy Paladin, your toolkit is set up in a better way. Sanctified Wrath. Avenging Wrath lasts 25% longer, awesome, and reduces Holy Shock's cooldown by 15% for its duration. So I was talking earlier about cyclical cooldown usage. So if we mix Holy Avenger and Avenging Wrath together, we're under cooldowns a lot. Very powerful cooldowns for a long time. And that makes you pretty much invaluable in a lot of different scenarios. That makes you pretty much invaluable, is you're able to counter very regular major damage and have something ready and raring to go to deal with it. In an interesting way, I've got to say. Like Holy Avenger giving you all that extra haste and holy shock healing. Very cool. Sanctified Wrath, you're going faster, you've got wings, motherfucker. You're holy shocking more. It changes your gameplay in some way. And that makes it very interesting to use. So it's not boring. It's not like, you do more healing now. That's not the way it works. You do other different gameplay things. Judgment of Light, though, there's always got to be a Judgment of Light up in the raid, right? And if you're the Paladin, you're doing it, right? If you're the Paladin that's doing it and your prot's not doing it or whatever, Judgment of Light should be up. It does a shitload of healing, but it does mean you have to keep your Judgment on cooldown. Again, of altering your gameplay in some way and making you more aware of different skills. Judgment now applies Judgment of Light to the target, causing the next 40 successful attacks against the target to heal the attacker for 11,000. So it's just going to give you all this passive healing, a lot of it. If you do take Judgment of Light, if you are the Paladin, get used to using Judgment. I'd recommend you just start getting used to using Judgment anyway, because it's just a really handy habit to get into. It used to be something that Paladins did a hell of a lot, particularly in Wrath of the Lich King, was judging on cooldown was a major part of their play. Blizzard's decided to keep that, so I'd recommend you do that. Let's move down there. Beacon of Faith, mark a second attack. So this gives you a second beacon. So we talked about Beacon of Light earlier. Now you get another beacon. You can mark a second target as a beacon, mimicking the effects of Beacon of Light. Your heals will now heal both of your beacons, but at 20% reduced effectiveness. So what you're giving up is 20% of your healing to heal 3 targets at once, all the time. That's what you're giving up. Yeah? You're giving up 20% healing to heal 3 targets at once. And there'll obviously be scenarios where that is very, very, very handy. Very handy indeed. So bear that in mind. Beacon of the Lightbringer, though. Mastery Lightbringer now increases your healing based on the target's proximity to either you or your Beacon of Light. This is what I was talking about earlier. That is based, if you take this, what you can have is your tanks beaconed if they're in the melee, and you could stand in the ranged, and your mastery is working in 2 different ways. Right? Whichever is closer. The healing and range of Light of Dawn is also increased by 30%, which is your AoE heal, right? So this is what you want to be aware of, is you're getting these bonuses to AoE, and now you can think about your position in a different way. It's very surprising that the Holy Paladin, the playstyle seems kind of mundane, but how it all works together is really quite interesting. Actually, I've surprised myself with how much I've enjoyed it recently. And our last one, everyone calls the Holy Paladin the tank healer. Which they are. In raids, there are other healing classes that can do raid healing better. That's just a flat-out truth. Nothing to be sad about, right? If every class didn't have its niche, they'd all just be the same class. Beacon of Virtue, though, when you're in dungeons and stuff. Oh, so good. It's cheap. 22,000 mana. It replaces your Beacon of Light, though, so you can't beacon the tank. Now, you might think to yourself, oh, I can't beacon the tank? That sucks. Not really. This thing only has a 15-second cooldown. And let's be honest, in a lot of content in dungeons, you're healing the tank anyway, so you're not getting much benefit out of Beacon of Light at all, right? What this does is it applies a Beacon of Light to your target and 3 injured allies within 30 yards for 8 seconds. That's right. It beacons the whole fucking team, pretty much. Your heals will heal all of them for 40% of the amount healed. Your Flash of Light and Holy Light on the targets will also refund 30% of their mana cost. This is incredible for healing groups. Utterly incredible. It's so good. It's so good. The sheer quantity of burst healing on a party you can put out with this thing is mental. Absolutely mental. It's so good. You see that? I beacon it. He's beacon. You got a beacon. You get a beacon. Everyone gets a beacon. So good. It lasts for 8 seconds, and in that 8 seconds, you can put out a shit ton of healing, particularly if you're using Holy Avenger or Sanctified Wrath, Avenging Wrath, right? It's so good. Get used to using it. Have fun with it. I suggest if you've been like, oh, I don't like the Holy Paladin because I'm just Flash of Lighting one target all the time, and it feels kind of dumb. If you've ever tried it, go and try it out now, and you're going to have some good times with it. So there you go. That's how you set up your Holy Paladin and the different scenarios you can use it in. Let's look at the gameplay. Gameplay-wise, it comes down to a number of things. Let me get myself in combat here. Is this the tank one? Yeah, so I can bring up my bars. Gameplay-wise, it comes down to managing a number of things. If you've taken, like, this is a kind of standard-ish dungeon setup, right? You might switch your aura depending on your situation, and you might switch to Cavalier or whatever. But generally speaking, this is a pretty standard dungeon setup. The first thing you're going to be doing is getting your finger used to pressing Holy Shock on cooldown, right? Either in a damaging way or in a healing way. But you want to keep this Holy Shock on cooldown. And the reason is all these Infusion of Lights procs. It's all good saying haste is useless, but it's only useless if you're going to generate Infusion of Light. So you want to be doing that in all scenarios, is keeping this Holy Shock on cooldown. If you're using certainly Judgment of Light, Judgment's got to mix into there as well, right? You've got to be using your Judgment and keeping that on cooldown. In between that, you probably want to keep Bestow Faith on cooldown. It's a very cheap, super efficient heal that you want to keep going somewhere. Finding people to use it on is very important. So these are your basics of gameplay. Then, once you've got those two down, you have to decide, what am I going to use these Infusions of Lights on? What is my purpose here? What am I going to do with them? Am I going to Flash of Light myself? Am I the target? Am I going to heal? Am I going to do a Holy Light? Which one's the best solution for you? And what you can see is already generating is a very, very action-packed style of play. Not only that, you can see you've got all these different cooldowns. Look at how many buttons I need to be keeping a track of on a Holy Paladin compared to some of the others. There's quite a lot here. Do I want to go with maybe a Holy Avenger spam or something like that? Now I'm going much faster. Now I can think about what I'm doing. I've got more Holy Shocks, etc., etc., etc. The healing's all buffed. Is this what I want to do? Do I want to AoE heal? Again, healing comes down to right tool for the right job. And right tool for the right job is very important. Then, do we want to mix the next one into wings? The damage is still going out there. Do I want to beacon my whole party during this scenario, right? What is the best way of me dealing with it? So what I'm going to do is, it's quite difficult to show you this, obviously, in any sort of train dummy scenario, is I'll do a daily video on it. You can check out the dailies. And they will have some Holy Paladin gameplay in it, and you should be able to see exactly what I'm talking about. But the main things I want you to be practicing are keeping Holy Shock on cooldown, getting these infusions up, utilizing the infusions in the correct way, and then working on what is my next move. Because you have these windows now. Is what is my next move that I'm going to make with my Holy Paladin? Maybe I'm going to bop somebody. Maybe I need to sack somebody. Maybe I need to put out a Light of Dawn buff on somebody. Maybe I actually need to get Tears Deliverance putting in work, you know? Do I need to rejudge? All these things happen in these small windows with the Holy Paladin where there is tons and tons of choice. Absolutely tons of choice to be made. So get practicing that, get that Holy Shot making work for you, and you should be in good stead. In conclusion then, to the Holy Paladin, I've got to say what I found here wasn't what I expected. I have badmouthed the Holy Paladin a few times, I know, and I take it all back and apologise. What I've actually found here is a spec that has a lot of versatility, and I'm not talking about the stat. There is a lot of good gameplay here. I love the melee attributes. I am so happy with how the new beacons work. Now I've been able to play around with them for a bit. I've done a few dungeons with the different ones, and it's been an absolute pleasure, honestly. But I tend to lean towards the melee gameplay. But I think thematically, with the big 2H, running in, doing big damage, swinging that, and then throwing out the heals, this is a class I can get behind. And recently with the Mistweaver video and of course the Holy Paladin giving this unique style of healing, it's very, very different from your traditional healer now. I think this is worth looking at again. I want to put some more hours into it, honestly. Even though the video's done, I definitely want to look at, spend some more time with it, doing some different things with it, trying out some more stuff. It's been a pleasure, and I hope you guys give it a try as well. Some add-ons I'd recommend are obviously either weak auras or Tell Me When to keep a track of all these things. You can see all the spells that I track while I'm healing on my Holy Paladin, and then utilizing them as best you can in order to keep a track of everything you want to keep a track of, because there's plenty of here to keep a track of and get best use out of. Ladies and gentlemen, the Holy Paladin, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you again. Bye-bye.